Imagine being in your late 20s and early 30s with your three colleagues, and you decide to start an asset management firm where you provide an independent asset management for entrepreneurs. And the very first fund you raise is 450 million US dollars. This is the story of, again, three colleagues. Their names are Marcel Ernie, Urs Wietlisbach, and Alfred Kantner. These guys are born in Switzerland, raised in Switzerland, and they're the founders of the Partners Group. Today, Partners Group manages more than 147 billion US dollars. And this is the story, the research which I did about them and about Urs Wietlisbach specifically. I was able to find a few interviews about him, a short article, and in here I'm covering it all. And in their early days, again, their goal was simple: to do an independent asset management for entrepreneurs. And they said stocks and bonds are boring. We are entrepreneurs. We want real assets. So we went into private equity. I always wanted to be independent. That was my goal. I always wished to start my own company. So that's what they did. Without any track record, they raised 450 million US dollars. And when asked from Urs, who is a good entrepreneur? A good entrepreneur knows where his weakest spots are. Nobody is perfect. A good entrepreneur knows his weaknesses and gets the best people for those weaknesses and gives them shares, hopefully, so they are incentivized. We had a big advantage that we were three founders and we were so different. And if you bundle us three together, you have the perfect entrepreneur. When it comes to friendship, we don't do much together outside of work. We're so different. We don't have the same interests. We're strong colleagues in business. We trust each other completely. Before founding the investment firm, they were all working at Goldman Sachs. And again, the two other founders were in their late 20s, and Urs was in early 30s. He was 31. What made you believe it was the right time and right decision to leave Goldman Sachs? It was an interesting story, as he secured himself a very healthy commission when working for Goldman Sachs. And next day, Marcel invited him to a coffee and asked whether Urs would be interested in starting a company together with him and Alfred. Obviously, Urs was like, "Come on, guys, you're crazy." Goldman at the time was really the absolute best place to be, but they still decided to leave their well-paying jobs. And Urs said that he was the oldest, he had the most money, he had 200,000 US dollars back then, and as there was no point in sitting in the office altogether in the early days, as every beginning is slow, they made a commitment that Urs invests 200,000 and joins 18 months later as an equal partner. So that's what they did. When should one leave and start their own business? Urs suggests people working for very large companies in early stages of their career secure your backpack, as he said. Do everything you can. Be curious. Ask a lot of questions. You never know what you will do in the future. So learn, learn, learn. Now, when working for a very large company, don't get too comfortable. Have the courage to leave. Again, don't get too comfortable. Have the courage to leave. High commission, comfortable salary, beautiful office in a great location, it makes you comfortable. So have the courage to leave. When we left, it was just crazy. Life was good, very great salary, and tons of upside. And Urs's father said, "You're completely insane. You're now on Goldman. You're on commissions. It's almost like your own business." But again, they still decided to leave. When it comes to some of the biggest mistakes they made in the early stage of Partners Group, there's an interesting story. There is a guy who came in the office and said he will help us bring the company 1 billion of funding to make the investments. And Urs said that this guy was probably the best salesman ever. And at the same time, they three founders, they were so stupid. Anyway, none of the three founders paid themselves anything upfront up to this guy. He said, "I will bring the money, but the only catch is I need to get paid upfront. And only then he can start closing deals to bring the capital." So he pretty much wanted to become one of the founders. They paid him 120,000 Swiss franc in cash, so it's pretty much the same in dollars. They went to the bank, they took the money in a plastic bag, and eventually the guy was gone with their money. Urs said that he did some of the intros, but that was nothing compared how much they paid for him. And it turned out this guy was a he said he was a scam artist from Germany, and they didn't do enough background, and this was their biggest most expensive mistake. But he said the positive side of all that was that made them extremely careful when it comes to everything in the future. Partners Group did a quite early IPO, and when asked what made you believe it was the right decision to an IPO in 2006, it was three young guys. We needed employees, and this happened before the IPO. So the first 150 people they hired in early days, they said they were all half entrepreneurs, as it's going to be 30% lower salary than their previous employer. And there were some folks who came from Goldman, and they even got 70% lower salary. First three partners after them were called B partners. High level guy who was running the UBS in Southeast Asia out of Singapore. The other was head of credit asset management in Frankfurt. All of them were in really high ranks, and all of them were older than them. So they paid those high level people 120,000 francs per year, and they gave them a few shares. Who got 0.5%, who got 1%, but all of them got shares, and they made sure that these people they have the belief in the company, and more importantly, they have the belief that this will be worth something big in the future. They had a 5-year cliff vesting period, all of them in the early days. The people who said no, the people who said they're not interested in doing that, and they would like to have the higher salary and the shares at the same time, for those guys, they said, stay where you are. You are not our type of person. And the whole goal was to get entrepreneurial thinking people who are willing to do the work today and hopefully get the rewards in the future. They really made sure everyone had the shares, even the receptionist. Then people started asking, what are those shares worth? And that's the reason they went and decided to go public in early stages of the firm. Because once they went public, then people saw what they lose when they leave. This was the first reason. Second reason, they then started going much more toward direct investing. Before that, they did fund to fund and secondaries, but after going public, they went much more direct and actually started acquiring businesses. And the third reason of going public in Asia, being public gave a completely different level. It comes down to the talking. So it didn't change much in the beginning. They said they are a private partnership with a public listing. And they said to employees, no need to watch the share price. Who cares? We are here for a long term. And they had the employees, the people who receive shares, they had a long lockup. So who cares what the share prices does? When it comes to reports, they did half a year reports. They said they don't care. The quarterly reports are for others. Of course, now it's totally different. People have sold shares, etc. Now it's a proper public firm with a market cap of 33 billion US dollars. Today, in their committee room, it says on the wall, we are responsible for dreams. What it means. For the founders, it's important to their investment professionals to know why they actually work. It's not for the share price or the carry, but at the heart of it, they work for pensioners. The majority of the money they invest today is from pension plans. And they really need to understand, as Urs said, sorry for the language, if they fuck up, they take away the dreams of pensioners. The biggest ticket today, a mandate they have, is 6.5 billion from a single pension fund. When it comes to the due diligence, doing deals, they often do all the due diligence and post-acquisition work before the company is for sale. Then they're really hoping that the bank or intermediary or an M&A boutique will come along and say, this company is for sale now. That's very interesting because then they have only 4 to 6 weeks to make a final bid. And Urs said, we kind of know what might be for sale sooner or later. And he also added, I don't know how the others are doing the due diligence in 4 to 6 weeks. We have been working for a year or longer on the transaction by then. He even brought out that there are few deals they've done which they worked, I think it was like 580 days before the company actually came and been on sale. When it comes to Urs' role in the partners group, Urs said, out of three founders, he is responsible for client relationships. He's the guy who gets the money in. Things have changed over time. Now they have like 100 to 120 people on the marketing team. But till this day, he really enjoys client meetings, convincing clients. He says he really enjoys talking, and he believes that is what he does the best. The private equity model followed by Partners Group, he said there used to be times where you could use 3% equity and 97% debt. Fast forward today, this is not the case. Far from that. Their portfolio average is 53% equity and 47% debt. Today, you don't make money with leverage. These times are over. You also don't make money with multiple expansion, buying it cheap in a private market and selling it in public. Today, the performance comes from the business concept as you manage companies. The average EBITDA growth on a group level, they own 90 companies at the moment, has been growing 15% the year over year. So if you grow your EBITDA 15% year over year, you make good money for your investors. When it comes to doing deals in 2024, in the old days, private equity partners were sitting in the office and the investment banker sent you the deals. It's not happening anymore, at least not for them. You want to find a good deal, you gotta work for it. What makes Partners Group so special and better than competitors? Urs said not too many funds are doing it, but it comes down to this proactive deal sourcing. A lot of industry is still waiting when the investment banker calls, says, we have now auctioning of X, Y, and Z company, which is up for sale. Not saying there is no competition. These days, when a company is worth more than 50 million, nobody sells a company without an intermediary, M&A boutique, or a bank. But the difference is when the bank book comes, we have already worked on this for 18 or 24 months. There was a very, very big transaction in Germany, a company called Techem. We knew the company was big. So when the bank book came, they were the only big player who had worked for as long as 582 days on this deal. And when asked how does Urs exactly know how long it takes, he said they have a deal log, so they know exactly how many days have been worked on each deal. And this was 582 days already before the company was even for sale. In this case, when the bank book came, the deal was already on their global investment committee. They had already talked to the management. They know this was going to become for sale in the next 3 or 2 years. This is their benefit. They have a team who does all the work, so they know what companies might come for sale. So when it came for sale, they knew everything. They knew the management knew them. They had a plan with management. They had told them what they wanted to do with the business. So working on many transactions long before you do them, this gives them a great advantage. Imagine they've been working on a deal for years, and then comes someone who has done it for 2 months. We already know who is going to win. All this requires a lot of time and a lot of people. Urs said, yes, as company owners, we wish to be more efficient. Partners Group has the most investment professionals per asset under management. It's because they do these more structural extra mile activities. This seems to be working well because they did research on returns, and when it comes to the big private equity firms, the well-known only Bravo has been doing better. The rest, CVC, Blackstone, Apollo, are behind in terms of returns of the last three funds. When it comes to tailwinds and management and which type of businesses they are really looking for, we like industries where there are strong tailwinds. Urs mentioned it a number of times. You have a great company, a great industry with strong tailwinds, but you have a bad management, and management is more than 50% of the returns. Picking the right management, incentivizing them the right way, that's almost an art. Also, figure out if you have the wrong picks, which they also had in the past. Then you need to change this very quickly. We don't only have the glamorous things going on. We also had not so good companies, and we found a way to turn it around, but it took a long time and a lot of effort, and this really affects the returns. When it comes to great opportunities in private equity, we don't like cyclical industries in this environment and this time. We like a lot of things with health and aging, this area specifically. We also like servicing companies, software servicing. But when you ask where the most transactions are going to happen, it's healthcare and business services. Thematic research, a very interesting concept in Partners Group. Before they even know in which company they want to invest, they have 4 industry teams who do constant research. Number 1, healthcare team. Number 2, IT team. Number 3, goods and products team. And number 4, servicing team. An example about the healthcare industry, which should give you a perfect example on how Partners Group actually work. In 4 to 5 years ago, United States changed the health insurance regulation. It was about physiotherapy. Before, they were not covering physio. Then they started to cover physio, plus they even forced it to do physiotherapy. It's even more interesting as people in general are getting older. The healthcare team in Partners Group were right away like, okay, well, that is very interesting place to be, as the 50 largest physiotherapy chains had only 12% of the market share. Very fragmented market. They then were looking at 2 companies, and finally one of them came to market. It was for sale. Then the bankers came and gave Partners Group the bank book. Here we go. You have 4 weeks to make a final bid. They were prepared. They had all the research done. They had the management in place. They had the IT systems pretty much ready to install. So the management knew exactly what to do with the company within the next 5 to 6 years. And when they invested in the company, it did 38 million in EBITDA, and 4 years later it does 110 million in EBITDA. Substantial increase. And Urs said also they've invested a lot. They used to have 100 clinics, and now it has 600 plus clinics. 4 clinics in Phoenix, 5 clinics in Miami, etc. They bought them all for a low multiple, 4 to 6 times. Then they have put a lot of money into digitalization all up front to have great systems. So whenever they acquire a new clinic, they just have to plug and play. Since 1980s, private equity has outperformed public market for about 4 percentage points. Urs very strongly believes the only reason for that is that private equity knows everything about the company at the time of an investment. If you know as much as we know in public firm, you should not invest because you should go to jail, because you would be an insider. The more we know, the better we invest. Second large thing, everybody is much better incentivized. This has nothing to do with leverage. Yes, the leverage helps, but we don't over lever. And to be even more clear, we have performed public markets even more than 4% points over the last 10 years. And to achieve that, you need to find industries which have a lot of tailwinds. You can have the best management in an industry which is dying. Not much you can do, let's put it in this way. When it comes to competition, it's very competitive and crowded market. But as I said earlier, this is why we have those 4 thematic research teams. I'll tell them once again: healthcare team, IT team, goods and products team, and servicing team. We want to be first when it comes to a specific industry, and we want to be first to find the best companies in those industries. When setting up teams in Partners Group and the compensations, Urs said, you eat what you kill. Those who are deal makers only do that. You don't look right and left. They have a well thought system. Thematic research. The whole team, they work together. It's a team effort. They share the carry with different teams. So their private debt team gets part of the carry of the direct equity team. The real estate team gets a little bit of carry because sometimes a private equity deal has a real estate angle. Sometimes you do a sale leaseback and such. Team of knowledge. 40% of team members are people with financial background. All the rest are coming out of industries. They hire people out of consumer industry. For example, their new head of private equity is an ex-CEO of German automobile company ZY Friedrichshafen in Germany, a global technology company that supplies systems for passenger cars, commercial vehicles, and industrial technology, which had like 250,000 employees. When it comes to compensations, they expect their senior managers to be part of each deal. They are big believers in sweat equity. When it comes to compensations, they expect their senior managers to be part of each deal. They are big believers in sweat equity. They do not pay high salaries, but the managers are involved with shares in those businesses. If a company does well, they all get very rich. We have CEOs where they make triple digit millions. They made 100 million and more out of investment, but they made us, Partners Group, 6-7 times our money. When doing large investments in a company, very often they have a chairman coming from the industry. For example, a company called PCI Pharma Services, a pharmaceutical outsourcing company, where they made 4 times their money. The chairman of this was Franz Homer, who was longtime CEO of Roche, which is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. This is the type of caliber they take, and Franz put a lot of his own money on this deal into PCI. When they took over the company, he became a chairman. For the management, having a chairman who's one of the real big guys overseeing the management together with Partners Group people on board, that's very, very helpful. Few general questions which were asked from Urs. What do you think makes entrepreneurs successful in so many areas? Being a generalist, seeing so many things, being a strong generalist foundation. You want to gather a lot of information, and it's about everything, not just one specific thing. Without wanting to sound high-nosed, I understand a lot of things out there, but I've never been a so-called specialist. A little bit of selling private equity, that I consider myself a specialist, but besides, I wouldn't say I'm a specialist. The thing is, you gotta get the right people. You coach them right, you incentivize them right, you oversee them, you fire them if they're not good. In the end, it's a people's business. Each business you take, it's people. The wide knowledge base has served him very well. And when it comes to getting this wide knowledge base, be curious, read a lot, ask a lot. Young or old, take advantage of living abroad, studying abroad, working abroad. For others, he used to be this annoying guy, ask them for lunch, dinner, ask all sorts of questions. Everyone was like, you again. But he said, I don't care. I just want the knowledge. Important note, make sure you are prepared and you read before going to ask those questions. Get the knowledge first and then go ask additional questions. It's a game of strength and weaknesses. Work on your weaknesses, but you never get them away. I'm really bad at details. I'm really bad at writing. To this day, my emails are not the best emails. But what I can do best, probably, I can convince people. I'm really good at sales. I can get people excited. This was the short research about the Partners Group. 3 founders, Marcel Lerny, Urs Wietlisbach, and Alfred Kantner. Today, they have more than 147 billion US dollars assets under management. But this is their story, and that's how they got started. So thanks a lot for listening, and see you in the next one.